Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to PS Ministries Bible Reading in 1 Year. Today we are talking about the book of Numbers, and I'm happy that all of you are here and those that are watching later. We hope that you have some new knowledge as we talk through this book. All I can say to everybody is wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, it's a
I
lot.
That's a wow on what God did. It's a wow on the Israelites. It's just wow. It's like in some cases, was just speechless because it seems like miracle after miracle and um, event after event, and just didn't get it. I don't know. Did anybody feel the same way or?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
it's there's
You
a
forget what all God did.
yeah.
A minute ago. It wasn't like, I mean, he did things that were memorable. It wasn't little things that you might forget. Pastor Jimmy, you were saying?
No, I was just thinking that it was just so much because the and the actual the we see the actual mercy as well of him towards it, and but also his patience as well.
Yeah.
And then we also see the point of actually the what representation the advocate, because Moses was an advocate, so was Aaron, many times, because as we'll look through, there was a lot of murmuring.
Okay. Yeah. So let's just jump in with this one. So why do you think the book of Numbers is essential to the Bible?
Well, I personally think that this solidifies the Hebrews as a nation because last time I said you needed four things to become a nation.
Hmm.
You needed the people, number one,
Hmm.
to which we have.
Yes.
You needed a law to which they have, the Ten Commandments, and you also need leaders to which they have Aaron and the judges. So the only remaining component is the land. So now Numbers leads them into the land of Canaan. And from here, they are solidified as a nation is defined.
Right. Um,
Though they do skip out on it because it takes them 38 years to do that little crossing, because they get a little bit of sort of how can I say, the jitters, which we will probably explore more.
yeah, we
No,
will.
they don't necessarily. I don't think they get the jitters. I think it's that they had the first taste of freedom and don't know how to respond. They don't know how to act, and so consequently, they start to murmur and whine and whimper and complain because they think that this is how they're going to get everything.
Hmm.
Because their freedom was given to them, they were delivered. So now they look to the deliverer for everything.
Yes.
Well, my
Um,
my
mhm.
answer to that question, okay, is actually comes at the very end, chapter 36. And I believe that Numbers is basically, you've got, without it, because it came about that it was actually, I know it was done in Leviticus and in Exodus, but the daughters of Zephahad,
Mm-hmm.
and he had no sons. So when the actual after the he died, because he was of the generation of the that actually wandered in the wilderness, but he had not sinned against the Lord. He wasn't one of the ones who sinned against them. So the daughters came to Moses and they asked about their inheritance, and they negotiated quite rightly, and God said yes to Moses. And they would actually, they made a law, they put a new law in because of them, that if a father had no sons, it would mean that the daughter would inherit, or daughters would inherit. They would get the inheritance, but they would have to marry within the tribe.
Okay.
So,
well, hold on before we get there, because we skip a whole lot before we get to that. So just hold on.
I know, but
Okay.
This goes to why I think numbers is essential.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because basically, because of that deal
Yes.
made, that when you go to the New Testament and you find out that the line of Joseph was actually, his lineage to David was broken. Mary's line to David wasn't, because it was Nathan, the brother of Solomon. So that means that her husband, then her father would actually adopt Joseph as a son, which means that he would then claim the inheritance of the daughter. So that means that the inheritance of the ancestry of David is linked through Mary, but given to Joseph and secured for Jesus. So that was done 1,500 years or so before the birth of Christ. So it's all pre-planned, just because the daughters needed an inheritance, because if there was no sons, they needed to have it, and they weren't. Their father died, they would have nothing. So that was for me, that was really a big opening, that without that, Mary wouldn't have been able to pass over the inheritance of the legitimacy of being a ancestor of David, or a descendant of David, which is Jesus needed to be.
Okay. All right, I understand.
Sorry, it was just, I know it was a bit at the end, but it was sort of linked into what I think the whole book sort of, I know there's a lot more in it, but there's, for me, that was the key factor for Christ to get its authenticity.
Okay. And I muted a few mics to minimize the background noise. So if you talking or up moving around, I muted your mic because I was picking up everything. All right. So when most people think of numbers or book of Numbers, then I would assume that they're thinking of counting or the census or something, reason why there is a whole book dedicated to numbers. And even though that is the case, there is also a lot of other things that take place with numbers. So I guess my second question would be, why are numbers important to God? Why do you think that he placed such an emphasis on numbers? I mean, there's numbers that mean different things, and I wish I could commit it to memory. I don't have them all committed to memory, but I know there's a list from 1 through 12 that has significant meanings. And like, for example, 7 is completion, 5 is grace, so on and so on. But when we get to this book in particular, why are numbers important?
I just want to the book of Numbers, actually not given the name because it came the Greek. It's a Gentile name of the book. The actual name of the book in Hebrew is completely different. It's actually not about the census.
Okay.
It's actually hold on. It's the book of, if I get this right, Lebar, which basically means, I think, means in the wilderness.
Yes.
So basically, we have actually got this. Somebody decided, if they're doing census, we'll give it a numbers. We'll just make it. That's what we ended up with.
Right.
So But yeah, I understand. I think for me the census is there. For me, whenever you actually, I know well, there's two census, and basically, without giving much away, they do the military census,
Mhm.
and they do all the figures and everything else, and it gives the layout of the tribes. But when they go for their little wanderings,
Mhm.
and then they come back and do a second census,
Mhm.
you would think there would be growth.
Mhm. Mhm.
There wasn't. It was exactly the same, virtually. So they hadn't lost much. What they had lost, they'd gained in other things, but they basically kept the same number. And so for me, the census was to show you go into the wilderness, you lose out. You don't go anywhere.
Mhm.
It's basically when you're coming back and you're going back in, and then the new people, the new generation were just the same. There's if it was just starting from scratch again, you know.
Mhm.
So that was interesting for me about the number thing. I know the other numbers. I don't know any of that either, so I'm not even going to go in that
Okay.
777 or
Yeah.
49 or whatever.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I don't have that list, and I don't have it committed to memory either. Um, but the counting of the animals and counting of the people was important. But what's also equally important is that in dealing with numbers, he gave very specific instructions on how to build things, how to build a tabernacle, or what measurements to use, and how many things you were going to need to do that. And I think as we talk, I'll share I have a diagram of the um, tabernacle and the surrounding walls and so on and so on. But numbers was a pretty big deal.
hmm?
Um, so that's why I'm curious is why do you think numbers is important?
Let someone else talk.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Well, I mean, there was Noah's Ark. That was with precision, had to be. And then specifically, how many animals had to be on there,
Mm.
um, two by two, but they also had extras on there, and he gave specific numbers for that. I mean, all throughout, anytime there was something to be built or created or made, he gave specific measurements on.
I don't know whether or not this is actually going to be that relevant, but it's just an information that the actual measurement of the tabernacle, its length and its breadth, not necessarily the height, but
Mhm.
the length and breadth is
Mhm.
exactly the same as Noah's Ark. It's the same measurements.
Which is I'm sorry, for what now?
Well, the length and breadth of the linen poles, the poles that surround the tabernacle,
Hmm.
that enclosure is exactly the same measurements that were given to Noah to build his ark.
Hmm.
So, in the sense of size
Hmm.
of one room, in the sense of a single story, that was actually the same size as the length and breadth of the ark.
Okay.
So it's interesting.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I have one too.
As you were comparing the size of the ark to the tabernacle, I'm thinking about the dimensions of what? Heaven. Are those dimensions the same or different, or how do they compare as to the ark and the tabernacle?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Yeah, I think is this what is this? Is, sorry, I'm just thinking of what I think what you mean. Is it because the tabernacle is the representation, or is that it's a mirror reflection of the heavenly?
Is it doors? Okay. Okay. I'm trying to recall as the new heaven is built, isn't there a structure?
Yeah, there is a structure, and it talks about the height, the width, and it's basically like a cube. I don't know if you've ever watched Star Trek, but it's shaped like a Bohr's cube. In regards to its shape, but as far as its actual dimensions, I couldn't tell you offhand. But I think that's what you're referring to. Am I correct?
Yeah. So my question is along those lines. Is that particular structure, does it have the same dimensions as the tabernacle?
No.
And they are.
No, because remember I just said that the new that when the let's see, I saw new heaven and earth all over. When the heaven comes in, it comes in like a cube. It's a cube. It's not. It doesn't have any dimensions like the shape of a cross or the shape of this structure is wider than this structure, or this structure is higher than this structure. It is a cube. It is a Borg's cube.
Okay,
All of the heights, widths, and breadths are the same. They are identical.
Thank you. Yeah. But as we're talking about numbers or just talking about God, period, we know that anything and everything that God mentions or names has some importance.
Yes.
And anyway, other than saying that, I don't have any other comment about the numbers. But
I have a question for Jimmy, because you were talking about the size of the tent as the same dimensions as that of the Noah's Ark. My question is the height. Is the height the same? Because I know the Noah's Ark is 3 floors.
Yeah, all it was, I was just making a reference to the fact that the length and breadth.
Okay, gotcha.
The actual curtains.
Okay.
Because basically Jacqueline brought up the Noah's Ark, so I was just saying it relates to it because of the actual dimensions were actually the outside dimensions are exactly the same. When you go back to actually Genesis, you will see the cubits, how many cubits there were. And you won't get the height because the Noah's Ark was actually more than a single story.
It was about 3 stories.
Yeah,
3 stories tall.
It was about 9, but okay.
9? You say 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was actually that in some ways that's not in here, but it was just all I was thinking was that the actual tabernacle itself is the tent of meeting was enclosed in an outer area around it, and that's where the dimensions came in. But the actual tabernacle, and yes, the inner holy holies is actually a cube. The Holy of Holies is a cube.
Yes.
So it's a representation. It's the earthly representation of what it is in heaven, the holy place of where God is. So he can dwell in both. Because as he's in heaven, he's also, we see further on, he's also the pillar of smoke is actually in the tabernacle talking to Moses, and he's also in heaven, heavenly heaven as well. So he can be all places at all time.
Right, he's omnipresent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
He's outside of time. I'm sorry. He operates outside of the perspective and concept of time that we have. So he can be there in the present, past, and future all at the same time and never miss a beat.
Yeah. So let's talk about these children of Israel.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like I said, I was a bit speechless with some of the things that were taking place. Do you think, well, they've been on a journey since Exodus, then they got a 40-year extension, some of them, because some of them
No,
died
all of
before
them.
that.
Only two of them.
Only two what?
Only two of them got a 4-year extension. Joshua and Caleb. They're the only two that got a 40-year extension. Everybody else was died off.
That's what I just said.
Oh,
Yeah, they died off
all right.
before
Not
that.
everybody else, just the 10 tribes of the other.
Well, everybody that exited Egypt, that came out of Egypt, died off.
The older generation, the parents of the children survived. The only two that did, who survived then with them, was Caleb and Joshua.
And
And all of their tribe.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No.
No, not all of their tribe, just them.
No.
Joshua were the two spies, were the only two spies that actually wanted to do what God's will of going into the land, and they brought back grapes and said that it was okay. There was giants there, but with God we can take them out. The others were too petrified, and because of that, we end up getting the judgment that God then gave on to the people.
So does their journey, 40-year journey, whatever, does that relate in any way to your own spiritual journey, perhaps?
It should affect all of our spiritual journey.
I know it does.
Let's be real about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are times that we remember and complain and fuss and feud and and then we're showing grace and giving a second chance, and we as happy as a lark for a couple of minutes, and then we're back to the same old murmuring and complaining again. So it's a constant struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
To follow God. It's a constant struggle to follow the will of God.
Well, I'll say your flesh is tested every day.
Okay, good. All right, I like that better.
Every day. I know. I was given something to do. I didn't do it. It was more of just disbelief of what was being revealed. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing from this person. And so I didn't do what I was told to do. But then I was reminded recently that you didn't obey my first request. And so when I get those little nudges, I hop to it. It's done. I might have missed the first message. The second one coming back around, I'm on top of it, and it's done. So yeah, it's a struggle from time to time. I won't say it's a struggle all the time, but we all have our own different experiences and whatnots and our own personal journeys. And sometimes we have to endure the consequences of those decisions that we've made affecting that journey. Jimmy, were you going to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It may be a little controversial.
Go ahead. I like controversy.
Instead of considering what we're doing is considering the wilderness as being our journey before we go to heaven. But what if I don't want to be in the wilderness?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was a dead time. That was a time for them. They didn't really learn anything. There was actually just basically that generation died. What if the crossing of the Jordan and it was going into that's whenever I am dead, basically. But if I'm crossing over the Jordan, I'm going into and following him, the Lord, and they're going through the water, baptism. Then you're actually in the land. You're in, and you're doing the journey.
Mhm.
Because they didn't. What the promised land wasn't their final destination, because not at that point, and we can't equate that as heaven, because they fought giants. They had to kill people. They had to get rid of the Nephilim. They had to get rid of. There was a whole loads of things happened.
Mhm.
That wasn't that, and their journey. They still had to obey, and there were still things about obeying. But when they didn't obey, then things went wrong.
Mhm.
So, like that's in the future. But basically, I'm just thinking of the wilderness. Sometimes we go in. We do have moments where we have this. We go in and we're not listening to God, and we end up in the wilderness, and we just wander.
Mhm.
And I think what we have to get out of that and do what He's asking us to do. I'm not saying but it's a take on it,
Mhm.
and because it's basically we're interpreting scripture, and we're putting how to affect it and apply this to our lives. And I'm just thinking, do I really want to be wandering around in the wilderness?
Mhm.
I hope not. I don't want to be there. But sometimes I have been, and sometimes, I think that's the truth of it. And I think some Christians might well be wandering, and they may not.
Well, I
They
don't
need.
think the children of Israel wanted to be in the wilderness. In fact, I know they didn't want to be in the wilderness, but they weren't obedient either.
No,
So, so you kind
they
of
didn't. They didn't do. They didn't do what He wanted them to do. Was that go across
right,
and trust Him?
right.
And then when they said no, we don't want to go, then they went and attacked somebody, and they got clobbered because they weren't doing it in the Lord. And it's sometimes when we do things on our own, it doesn't work.
And
We
to add on to that,
with Him. Mm-hmm.
What was that,
to add
Kevin?
on to that, Jimmy, when we do things part the way, as some of the Israelites did, because if they were told to kill off a group of people and they didn't, they let some of them live and assimilate them into their culture, then they face the consequences of that too.
Right. Partial obedience is not complete obedience. It's considered sin. It's still, yeah.
I'm not. You're talking about a simulation again, and that's another discussion.
Well, no, God's the same. It's like partial obedience is still is sin. It's not. If you don't do it the way He says do it, then you're not going to get the results He's saying.
Right.
And therefore, that's why you suffer the consequences.
And that's why I'm saying about when they ended up going, they refused to go into the promised land, into Canaan, and Kedebashi, and they refused. And then after that refusal, they decided, oh, well, we're going to go and attack these people because they've done it off their own bat. And they actually, I think it was the Amorites, and they got beat up. They got, it's in the early chapters, but they actually got beat up, and sort of took a pretty bad. I thought quite a few thousand got killed. But then that's whenever Moses took them into the wilderness, and they went for their little wander.
As I'm thinking about the story and you're talking about the wilderness, when we look at the story, God had built into their lives a wilderness experience. What ends up happening is the wilderness experience was longer than God had planned for. Mm-hmm. And it ended in what? The death of those that were 20 and older. Because originally the wilderness experience was only supposed to take 11 days, I think.
Yeah.
To go.
Mm-hmm. They got to the Katie Bar sheet.
No, 40. Wasn't supposed to be 40?
No.
No. As a result of them bringing back the evil report, God extended the 11-day journey.
Yes.
To
Gotcha.
38
years.
Gotcha.
38 years, yeah.
Right. The experience, I think they were in the land of milk and honey for 40 days. And so the punishment was they would have to wander in the wilderness for every day for the 40 days. So it ended up being 40 years. And they would die out, all of those that were 20 and older, because of the evil report. And so just thinking about that, God may have for us, and I'm quite sure most of us have experienced some wilderness thing that was purposely put into our lives. Now, whether we spend an extended time or not, I don't know, because I don't know, each one of your lives and your experiences. But I do know that I've had some wilderness experiences. And for some of them, I did spend a little bit more time because of, again, not listening to God when I knew he had said something specific, and it extended my time going through the wilderness.
Absolutely. I can attest to the same thing. And sometimes I've had to repeat the lesson. just keeping it real. Sometimes I had a do-over because I didn't get it the first time. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So Moses and Aaron had a tough job, tough job, because they were always coming against Moses and Aaron. It's hard for me to understand some of the mindset of what took place back then, because the Lord can do some things, and he has my immediate attention. In some of the things that they were seeing, and you're still grumbling, and you're still murmuring, and still complaining. How do you think? Well, we know how Moses and Aaron felt. When they heard something absurd, they dropped to their knees and
prayed, fell
right.
prostrate.
Yes.
Can I ask the two persons that have the title of pastor, are you senior pastors?
I don't think there are any senior pastors.
No,
they're not senior pastors. Okay. But yet you have the title of pastor, which means that you have led a group of people, and you may be able to express some of the things that Aaron and Moses experienced as a leader over groups of people with all sorts of mindset.
Yes, of course. I think everyone here has done that in one form or another.
Or you'll probably be able to empathize and sympathize with Moses and understand.
Oh yes.
How many people? I think it was 3 million people were over.
Yeah, about 3 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you count the over 20s, and they were the only fighting men, you can treble that. And I actually did. Whenever Jacqueline says about numbers, I actually did do the numbers.
Did you do the numbers? Okay.
And but I kept it on my phone. It works out about 500,000. Just so you multiply that by 3. Well, it has to be more than 500,000. That's a 186. That's 286, 296, 296, 396, 496, 496, and then you've got there was about 500,000, so 500,000 fighting men And then you've got anyone who's 19 and under, who was of males, weren't registered that day, and none of the Levites were mentioned, and they're about 22,000. So you add another 20. So yeah, you're getting, and then you're talking about the families. So you end up doubling that, and then for the wives of women, and then you end up doing again for the daughters. So you've actually, none of them will be they won't be registered. So you've actually got all this, and you're talking about around about the 3 million, 2.5, 3 million mark. So it was a large group.
And then it's a mixed group of people.
Yeah.
This is not all Israelites.
Mm. Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah.
Yep. And all different personalities.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. So,
what was your question, Jacqueline?
I was going to ask about Aaron and Moses' role with the Israelites and their behavior.
Well, I was thinking about the different. There were 7 murmurings. Oddly enough, 7. It works out at 7.
No completion, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, then you've actually got, but what's interesting is that no matter what happens, even when God is turned around and he's angry, he says to Moses, there was one point he said to him, right, you and Aaron, get over here, get away from them, and I'll just wipe them out, and I'll start afresh with you. And Moses goes straight in there and pleads.
Right.
He doesn't accept it. He could actually have started his own. He could have been the start of the nation, a restart. But his argument was, he went in and said, "Look, what about the Egyptians? They'll actually think you've just rescued all these, and then you can't keep them, and then you get rid of them, and you've just destroyed them after getting them out of there. It won't look good for you." He could, and literally that's what he did. He went in and he started to negotiate with God.
Yeah.
And tell them that he might not look good if he did that, and he worked on behalf of the people.
Mm-hmm.
And even there was other times whenever the plague happened, that he went straight to Aaron, and he says, "Get the incense." And Aaron went off, and Aaron had to stand between the dead and the living while Moses prayed, and they interceded for God to stop the plague, which he did. So that was an immediate effect. There was other times again where it was just he just pleaded on behalf of the people. Even whenever they moaned about the manna, what's this? And it was they were complaining about the manna, because that's what it's called. What's this? That's the interpretation of manna. What's this? And they turned around and they complained about that. And yet they were getting it, and it was nourishing, and it tasted of oil, and they could bake with it, and they could make cakes and bread with it, and grind it up, and they got quails. Well, he said, "Yeah, you can have quails. You have."
They actually asked for meat. They didn't ask for quail.
God gave them quail.
I eat quail.
Right.
And so but the thing is that whenever all that was happening, Moses still stood up, and when they were moaning again, they got the vipers, the fiery vipers. He still interceded for them. And that, I think, as you're saying about a pastor, it's about standing up and saying the need of the people over and above it. And he was, for me, he was actually a representation of whenever he was putting himself between the people and the wrath of God, he was becoming their advocate. He was a reflection, a type of Christ.
Kept saying interceding for him. Would that the pastors this day would do a lot of interceding on the behalf of the congregation.
Yes. all the time. And it kind of reminds me of the Holy Spirit as to how the Holy Spirit intercedes for us.
Mhm.
This is what it brings to mind, as far as I'm concerned, the intercessions that they had to make between the Israelites and God, because God was going to wipe them out, and He did kill off some of them, quite a bit of them, killed off quite a bit of them before His anger subsided.
But Moses had to then make the serpent out of bronze,
Mhm.
and that took time.
Yeah,
To
that's Nehushtan. That's called Nehushtan.
Yeah, but they were basically still dying of the fiery serpents while he was trying to make it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So there was all that time, and then he had to stand on a hill, and then what they had to do was look at it. But
right, if they could look at it, see, that's the other thing. How many of them were so in agony that they couldn't even look?
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much that. It's about the serpent, and because they're being bit by serpents, vipers, they're being, and the serpent. In Egypt. There's a serpent god. So what I think what was happening here is we don't know what the actual. It's never explained in the Old Testament. It's never explained. You can go through the whole Testament, the Old Testament, and that is never explained of why a bronze serpent was put on a stake. We only know about it because of Nicodemus.
Mm-hmm.
John chapter 3.
Oh yeah. But it's what I think, Jimmy, might be because God sent the serpents to attack the people because they were so complaining so much. Until he just got so frustrated, and he told Moses, "Well, make a snake and put it on a pole." I think he just did it arbitrarily.
No.
I mean, I know he has a purpose, but it just seems to be it was arbitrarily. Well, to bind a snake, make a snake, and put it on a pole, and to look on the snake, and then didn't look at it and live.
No, I think what we got is we only get the explanation in John 3 when Jesus talks to Nicodemus. That's when we get the reason for why the bronze serpent is about. They use the bronze for sacrifice to take sin, basically, and to purify. So basically, the bronze is to take away, and you got the bronze serpent until the Son of Man is raised up, like the serpent Moses raised the serpent in the desert, in the wilderness, and that's whenever Jesus makes reference to it. And all I'm saying is that's the first and only time that was actually explained. It's not explained in any other place. So it's just I'm not surprised, but people actually did look up and survived.
Well, I think that the comparison that's made here is that the serpent on the pole is a symbol of the taking away of the sins of the people, which is what Jesus did when he was raised up on the pole.
Yeah, that's why I've said John 3. But what I'm saying is it was never explained to the Israelites. No one knew the explanation of it. There's nothing in the Old Testament that explained the reason for using a bronze serpent. And sort of later on it gets used as an idol, and it gets broken up. I think it's Hezekiah breaks it up because it's actually been revered as in worship, as an idol. So it gets broken up later on. But it's just that there's no explanation given in the Old Testament. The first time we get is when Jesus refers to it with Nicodemus. And then we get the understanding because we're looking at it we're looking back, whereas they were actually there, and they didn't have any. There was no explanation of why that took place. They couldn't work it out. I think that it was an odd thing, and and I think we understand it now because of what Jesus said, and what you just said about taking the sin away, which is what he did. But it was a reflection. Everything in the old is reflecting what takes place with Christ, because it's all the forerunner. It's all leading up to him. Everything.
All right. I'm not sure where the feedback is coming from, but we got a lot.
Hold on, I'll do that.
So, I'm sorry. Did somebody say something? Okay. The Promised Land. Is there a correlation between the land flowing with milk and honey and Jesus and an inheritance for us, or how do we relate the two?
Well, I was trying to make a comparison between the 40 years that the Israelites wandered in the desert compared to the 40 days Jesus was in the wilderness, wandering around in the wilderness, being tempted. And that's as far as I got, as far as a comparison.
But Jesus wasn't forced into it.
Well, understandable. I'm just saying that he was just wandering. He was wandering in the desert for 40 days. So I'm just, the number 40 becomes prevalent. 40 days, 40 years.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned when we first started about the importance why were numbers so important to God, because there is repetition with numbers, because Noah was 40 days and 40 nights, and so those numbers were important to him. So we kind of touched on that in the beginning, but is there a correlation?
I believe so. That for the Israelites, the land with milk and honey meant prosperity, and they would thrive there. And for us, our promised land is Jesus, because when you're with Jesus, he will cause you to prosper and thrive.
Yeah.
Who's also our inheritance.
Okay. Right. Like the promised land was their actual, physical promised land was their inheritance. And so to Jesus is our inheritance. Well, our inheritance is actually the heathen of this world, which would correlate to them having had to take care of all the people that God said to kick off the land so they could have it, to battle those people, and he would give them the victory so that they would win the actual land, which gave them what do we say? They had to be all in. They had to do something that God didn't just give it to them. They had to do something. They had to be obedient to what God said to do in order to inherit the land that he gave them.
Yes.
In the beginning of Numbers, as God is lining up the group, does he mention something about them being warriors or fighters or the army?
That comes at the end of Numbers, doesn't it? The second census, where they are actually numbered by their tribes.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I was saying earlier, that there was 4 things to become a nation, and the numbers is the completes the 4th component of a land, to become a nation, as the termination goes, because now they have a fortified army that they can use to support or fight for their territory, because now they have an established territory that they are going into, the land of milk and honey.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to think that they were slaves, and now they get to a certain place where he's calling them what? An army. They're to be soldiers for the sole purpose of what? They're going to have to fight to possess the land of the promise of milk and honey.
Mm-hmm.
But they also do it with, they have to do it under his direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right, most definitely.
Like they have the battles prior to going into the Canaan. They have to go up and take out. They try and get through, for example, Edom, through the King's Highway, and they refuse. This is before they actually go into the wilderness with wonders. This is before they get there. The Kadesh Barnea. And they ask the Moabites as well, and they refuse. And so they go round and they take on the Amorites and they annihilate them. And then they go even further north and they take on the Og, I think it's Og, the king of the giant. And there's a whole, that's where, in the far north. Still on the eastern side of the Jordan, but they take them out, and that leads to the Moabite, the king of the Moabites, you in orbit, and that would actually bring us to why he gets a little bit scared. But if he wasn't a Moabite, the king of the Moabites was not a Moabite. But if he was a Moabite, he was like in the UK, whenever England was invaded by the Saxons, there was Saxon, and then the Normans came in and they took over, and they had the hierarchy, and the kingship was actually of a different people from the actual people that were there. So the Moabites were conquered by this king, Balak. It's called, if my memory serves me. And he was, because if he had known if he was a Moabite, he would know that the Jews wouldn't fight him, because God had forbidden them to actually fight
their relatives,
Edom or Moab, because they were actually family.
Mm-hmm.
They could actually destroy the Amorites and the sort of the Nephilim up the top, the giant, but they weren't related. So, but that's there's just and then that's why when he comes down, and then you end up they encamp and they're asking for to get to there's a highway. I don't know
Well, let's talk about Balaam and his donkey.
I love him. I love that story. He's a basically. I've researched him, and he came from Macedonia. He was around in Turkey, in the round sort of in that area, just and he come down, and he was actually a sorcerer. He was actually linked in. He was into the occult, and he would sell his. He'd be a prophet, so he would sell his prophetic words in a sense for money. And oddly enough, he knew about Yahweh, and he respected that, and he knew about the God of the Israelites. So when Balak actually sent for him, because he was actually Balaam was actually of great renown. He was well known. He's going to pay him a lot of money. And he said, well, I'll have to go and ask. And he was told, God said, no, you only bless them. You can't curse them. And you're not, I don't want you to go. And then he ended up, eventually, he did go.
That's why I have a question. Because why did he go? It didn't say that he had to go. The Bible just says that he went. And then God was angry because he went.
Because he was told not to go.
But
and
the
then
second time,
he had a second visit, and they said, we'll give you more money. And he says, well, and he asked God, and God said, well, I don't want you to go, but if you go, you only say what I say. But I don't want you to go. And he basically was not listening to the original message. The original message was, I don't want you to go.
Okay, so now, but if I'm looking at the 22nd chapter, the 20, I can't see straight, the 20th verse, it says, that night God came to Balaam and told him, since these men have come for you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you. And then in the next verse, so the next morning, Balaam got up, saddled his donkey, and started off with the Moabite officers. But God was angry with Balaam because he was going. But yet he was told to go.
No, he was told to ask them if he was told to. It's all in the wording, actually. It was really. I should have.
You want me to read it? I'll read it again. It says.
No, it's not that one.
Where are you?
Verse 20. 22nd chapter.
Yeah. In the camp, Balak, the son of Zippor, and then the Moabiters of Midian.
He told him to go.
Right, God told him to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the
and only say what he gives him to say.
Right, but then in the 21st verse, God is angry because he's going.
When there's a contradiction, or appears to be a contradiction, there isn't. There's definite message.
Do you see anything, Gwen, what I'm saying?
Okay.
Jimmy, you see it? The 21st verse, the 20th and the 21st verse.
The 20th to the 21st.
Right.
And God came to him at night and said to him, if the men come to call on you, rise up and go with them. But only.
Okay, now he told him to go with him, but only say what he says for them to say. But then in the very next verse, the 21st verse.
No, you're missing it. That's just the bit I was on about. And God came to Balaam and said, if the men have come to call you, rise up and go with them.
I got it. Okay, got
go with them. He got it. Just went.
Right. I got it.
They didn't come to call.
They didn't come. They didn't come and get him. He didn't go with them because he was on the road on his own.
You know, God says, since these men have come, go with them. But he was saying because I got it.
Right.
Come for you.
Right. Okay, I got it.
The donkey and went. Mm-hmm.
I'm right up there. It's all about the wording and how
exactly.
Yeah.
Gotta follow God's instructions.
There's a contradiction. There isn't.
That's why 6 eyes are better than one, but better than two. Right?
But it's interesting, because so Balaam arose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went, and just went.
Mm-hmm. He didn't wait for them to come and get him or call for him.
He saddled and done it. He didn't even wait for them to approach him. He just done it.
Yeah, he didn't even wait for them to get up.
Mm-hmm.
He probably met them with the coffee.
One never got a chance to because of the donkey he was riding.
Because one of the problems with Balaam is that he was doing everything right. He went to God and he asked him. But what his heart, even though he was a Gentile, his heart was still he's into the occult. So based potentially, because if he was listening and he was doing all these other things and prophesying, he wasn't a believer in Yahweh, a true believer in Yahweh. But he knew of him, because one of the things is, I think I said to you, Kevin, when the donkey sees the angel and then he gets beaten and eventually he falls over because there's nowhere to go, God opens his mouth. And Balaam isn't actually taken aback. I'm sorry, I would be. If a donkey started talking to me and what are you beating me for? I'd be going, what?
I would have jumped out of my skin.
What is it? Did more than what?
he was actually he just went, he entered into a dialogue with the donkey.
Yeah.
As if it was normal.
Right.
And one of the things I looked up was that in the occult, and if they're into and there was a lot of occulty,
that's a normal thing.
They would actually they would have animals talk. The demons would talk through animals.
Right.
And so this is where we get the familiar, the sorcerer's familiar and stuff, and all this caper. And there's actually there's truths in some of these all the stories. But the thing is that he didn't have any fear about a donkey talking to him. So there had to be, at other times, he must have heard animals talk to him. That's all I can say. For him not to be feared,
he's used to
seeing
miracles happen because of God.
I know, but he wasn't a believer, Gwen, was he? Really? Because he was out for money.
Well, I kept trying to place him. Where did he come from, and I couldn't. So I'm like, okay, one is asking him to curse, one is asking him to bless. So I'm like, he can't be from that group. So where did he even come from?
Yeah, he was on his own island.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a traveling prophet for money.
Yeah,
he just got money for his prophecies. And so he profited from making prophecies or curses or blessings on people. Mm-hmm. But also one of the things we have to remember as well, that prophecy, prediction, as seen as a prediction, is a Greek ideology. The Hebrews were actually considered a prophecy in a different way. It was about, hold on, let me get this. I've written it down.
I want to say in chapter 22, verse 5, it says where Balaam dwelt, where he came from.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Mesopotamia or something? Is it?
No, he was the son of Beor, I should say.
Zeor.
Beor.
What country though was he from?
Pithor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people. Mm-hmm. It says.
I've written it down. I can't find it.
So you're looking at the reference for prophecy in Hebrew?
Yeah, it's the Hebrew. I said prophecy, prediction, and fulfillment is a Greek model type, and the Hebrew style or of interpreting a prophecy is pattern. They look for the pattern in prophecy. So they would actually be looking, rather than it being, in a sense, predictive, they would actually see the pattern coming through in prophecy. So it's just something I found, that the different ways in which we don't always sort of. It's a bit like reading the scriptures in English. But in real terms, if you could read them in the Hebrew or the Greek, then there would be a lot more understanding because of the nuances that are actually there. But because we can't all do that, we have to depend on other people to actually give us that interpretation. So for the transcript of it. So no, I just it comes into the Balaam and his donkey. It sort of does that lead into the his 4 oracles, the 4 oracles that he gives to Balak?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Okay, go ahead.
I was listening to you say prophecy in Hebrew. They more so looked at patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about a Bible verse that appears in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament that says, let everything be established by 2 or 3 witnesses, which says to me that it sort of goes along with a pattern or, like a repetition of something. And I was thinking about, I've received a lot of prophecies in my life. And for some of the things that have been prophesied, I've received more than 2 or 3 prophecies about just, for instance, my calling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I really delved into those 2 scriptures, I said, oh, okay. If you've received the prophecy 2 or 3 times, then it's sort of like a done deal, or God is very serious in trying to tell you that this is what I want to come to pass in your life. And again, it goes along for me, the idea of patterns to rest your truth or your faith in prophecies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you have some? Did you have something to say about the oracles, June?
I thought Kevin was.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make it short and sweet.
Sorry, have I just thrown you into it there, Kevin?
That's not a problem. Not a problem. I'll make it short and sweet.
Hold on before you start, Dr. Collins. Were you going to say something?
So I can. Yahweh speaks through Balaam. I just think that it's for me that it was actually no matter what Balak wanted Balaam to say, he wanted them to curse the Israelites, and he couldn't. Right. And no matter what Balaam could do, no matter what he said, it all came out as a blessing, and he couldn't do anything but bless. And sort of and then like it's just then he took up his discourse and said, all right. And Balak said to him, what has Yahweh spoken? And then he gave his message to Balak, and he turned around and said, arise, O Balak, and hear, give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, not son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken and will not establish it? And behold, I have received a command to bless, and when he is blessed, then I cannot revoke it. He has not observed misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. Yahweh, his God, is with him. Just give him a blessing. He told Balak how it was. No matter what you want, God is not the same as you. God is God, and he will do what he wants, and he is not going to curse these people.
And then he tells them that a ruler is going to rise out of Jacob, to make matters worse. And then Balaam looks over towards the people of Amalek and delivered this message. Amalek was the greatest of nations, but its destiny is destruction. And out of the Kentites, they will be spared for the most part because they live in rocks for the most part. But they will be spared. But Balak's culture is done.
Mm. Mm. And I think for me, we have to be these blessings are even relevant today, but not just for Israel, the physical Israel, but also for us as part of Christ, because we are God's people. So this applies, and He will divide the nations, and He will and shatter them with His arrow. He crouches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him. Blessed is everyone who blesses you, and cursed is everyone who curses.
Right.
And that applies to, if anyone blesses us, then they'll be blessed. But if anyone curses us, then they'll be cursed, because we're God's people as well as the Israelites. And the same applies to the physical people now today, I think, the Israelites. And that they're seeing there's been a lot of cursing going on, in the sense from the peoples around, and it hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. And they're actually surviving. And I think the blessings will eventually come, but they will have to endure a lot more, I think, after judging from Revelation. But there's another oracle. Goodness me, there's Gwen. He does 4, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's 4. The 4th one is actually fixing judgment on him, and what is it, the Moabites? No, the Kentites rather.
Well, who can live except when God has ordained it? The ships shall come, and the coast of and they will flick Asher.
The Kentites will be destroyed when the Assyrians take and capture.
So they will come and to destruction. So he's ordained. It's going to be this destruction. That's a prophecy. Asher. That's what I got. That it's from my point of view. But then you see, whenever Balaam gets away from this, he actually gets a way around it, because even though he can't curse them, he actually tells Balak how to actually gives him a counsel of how to get around it. So that's why he isn't really a very nice man. And I don't think he's a believer. He just couldn't do anything about it. Because he gets them to actually offer the women to the men of Israel. And offers that, and actually then and basically he says if they actually go into fornication with the women, then God will actually be displeased with them, and that's what happened. The Midian women were actually sent in and used. What was interesting for me was whenever that happened, a lot of the people were actually fell down, because the cloud descended onto the tabernacle and spoke to Moses, and right in front of them, I'm not sure what his name is. I can't forget that, but there was one of the men walked straight in front with a Midian girl with him, and went into his tent, and because at this point Aaron had died, and his son Eben was high priest, and he took up a spear, followed into the tent.
Oh yeah, killed him
because there was a plague being put onto the people because of this. And as soon as he killed, God had said, right, everything's done. And again, it's about the sacrifice of blood quells, and is actually about that. And because he did what the righteous thing for God, and his heart was doing it because of what he felt that it was God was he was offending God. Then it was actually the plague was quelled. It was taken away.
Yeah, but the plague itself,
it's like Leviticus, very bloody, you know.
That plague was because they had intimacy with foreign women. And Aaron's son went to kill him because he refused to abandon her. So he needed a little help.
He put a spear through both of them. Yeah.
Right. So he helped them.
And then that stopped the plague because God seen that and decided mercy on the people. But there was a lot of people died as well. I think it was. Oh yes, I know. It's in Hebrews where it says 24,000 were killed, or 24,000 died. But in Numbers it says 23,000 died of the plague.
Okay.
People are actually saying, well, that's a discrepancy, but there isn't, because there was 1,000 men who were taken aside, who had been fornicating with the women, and they were killed. So that means that 1,000 on top of the 23,000 makes 24,000. So whenever there's, and as I say, whenever there seems to be a discrepancy, there isn't, because you just have to go back and find where the discrepancy appears to be. So it's really, I just find that very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Numbers again.
Yeah. Numbers again. So what do you think about the laws and regulations for the Israelites? Do you think they felt that was too much? You know, coming out of Egypt, they were enslaved, but they didn't have all of these new rules. So it's now God's trying to bring some discipline and order to their lives. And is that too much for them to do? I know I joked last time about that's why men won't ask for directions, because it's because of Leviticus.
Personally, I don't think it was too much. I just think that they just didn't know how to handle this newfound freedom. Yeah. And they were just stiff-necked and wanted to do what they wanted to do, regardless of who and who said it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's very particular, meticulous.
He is very meticulous. So quite a few times, God had to show him, that I said it and I meant it, and because I meant it, you're going to suffer these consequences because you refuse to listen. But the only people that well, I can't say the only people that are affected were the ones that perished, because of the ones that witnessed it should have had a profound effect on them, but it didn't. It was just in the circle.
I know I'm laughing because there was quite a few incidents happened where people got killed, and then the next day they were still moaning.
Mm-hmm.
Go, what? Learn from this. But one of the things was that you were saying about this question, and I think what's the simple answer is no. They agreed. The Abrahamic covenant was unconditional. Mm-hmm. The Mosaic covenant was that they agreed to accept it. Mm-hmm. So when Moses came down with that covenant, he offered it to them, and they had to agree as a nation to accept it. So it wasn't unconditional. That was actually, they had to accept that. The Abrahamic one, it's there. It's unconditional. It's what God did. It's just a promise that He made, and that's unconditional. Just the way Jesus is unconditional. Mm-hmm. the only thing is we have to just believe. But the thing is with the Mosaic, they had to agree to abide by the law, and they knew what they were getting into because it was all read out to them. Right. So yeah, I think they found it, and maybe that's getting too much, but they had agreed to it. It's like when you enter into an agreement, you're stuck with it. You're in that agreement. You read the small print.
And not only that, didn't they have days and festivals where the laws were read out to them?
What was that?
Sorry?
Didn't they also have days and festivals in which the law was read to them continuously all the time?
Well, you would have to, if there was nearly 3 million people there. I think they would have to do it in little stages of taking the law to actually get it to different points where they would be able to hear the law and being recited to them. I think that's the job of the Levites, because the Levites were set apart as the firstborn, and they were actually given to God. So the tribe of Levi was actually then given to the service of God. But then only the line of Aaron was actually going to be high priest.
Do you think that these laws were put in place to set them apart?
That too.
Definitely.
Yes, and to help retrain their mindset, to help them understand what God is requiring of them.
Okay.
And I think whenever you were saying about when they misbehaved, God had to, because it was, he had to make an action. There's a consequence here, and he had to give that consequence so that they knew there was going to be a consequence. Like it's actually then literally, and this would pass around that, like you're talking about lots of people, and it would just be boof. They would know about it, but they still murmured. They still, But then that's I was just thinking, do we do? It's reflecting it onto the church. Some days, we moan and groan and everything else, and we're not necessarily not in the same way, in the sense that but we do. I think we do moan sometimes.
So we're basically the same, you think? Has there been any improvement, any transformations since then? We are on a different
We're all different
scale, because I can't even imagine them having access to social media. I just can't. But since we have access to social media, are we essentially almost the same as them, or have we improved some?
But as a people, or as Christians,
it doesn't
or as
matter. But as Christians,
I would think that some have, some haven't. God always has a remnant that has not been disobedient, has not trying to have their own way, but actually be obedient to what God says for them to do. Not perfect, but definitely they are more focused on pleasing God than they are of pleasing man.
2 out of 10, 2 out of 12. The remnant.
Exactly.
2 out of 12. We're going to do what God said.
Wow.
10 said no.
They believe God. That was their saving grace, was that they believe God would be with them. They have faith that God would bring them through. But because of the other 10 scouts saying, no, we can't do it. Not even with God can we do this.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you have people like that today, right? We do. It doesn't matter. We could talk about faith and growing your faith, But there are people who would rather run to a doctor than believe God can heal them.
Mm-hmm. Or that they have the power to heal themselves. Well, not them, but through the whole with
But
the
their bodies our bodies were made to heal, to heal us.
Mhm.
It was made that way.
Mhm.
But through sin, no, we're in sin has its effect, and with sin is the wages of sin is death. So basically, it's the decay, and that's why we don't live as long as 900 years, because our bodies just don't do it anymore because of sin has actually really permeated the into the world. But also the not everybody. I was just thinking about it's. Someone was saying to me about, well, what if I was really ill? Um, it, I've got no problems about being really ill because at the end of the day, um, I I know where I'm going, and this is only a transition point. Whether if I'm going to be here doing this journey longer than whatever specified time, that time is specified by God.
Mhm.
I don't make up that whatever time. The doctor doesn't make up that time. Doesn't matter what I do. He specifies. God, the Lord specifies when. The Father Almighty. He's the one who decides when I'm going home, and it's just interesting that it was out of all the whenever Jesus was doing the miracles, there's only three recorded um, people who were actually raised from the dead. He healed people, but he didn't necessarily raise. He only raised. There was only three people whom he raised from the dead, and they were all at different stages of death. And the final one, Lazarus, was actually dead for 4 days. So he was really and truly dead, in the sense that the physical body was decaying in the heat. So
Bible was one. Who was the third one?
Lazarus was the third one.
Who was the okay?
The second one was the widow's son, because he had
Oh,
just died, but he was being taken to the burial site, so he was on his way to the tomb. And the first one was the little girl.
The little girl.
Right, Jairus' daughter.
She had just died, so she had just gone. So there was that three stages, and so therefore the final one was actually legitimate.
Each one was longer, right? She was
yeah,
she was
you're right.
immediate, right? The boy was on his way to being buried, so you knew that had to be within 3 days, and then Lazarus was definitely 4 days.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But it was just sort of it's just sort of the process. There's only in a sense that. So what I'm saying is that the life and death is all in his hands, and in basic time, if it's my time to go to join him, then it's my time to go, and again, and I'd be quite happy to, in some ways, to make that journey, but I still need to actually do a few things now. Because I want to get a few things done before that happens, but I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I just don't, and I've got no. But it doesn't. How can I say it? It doesn't. Where death doesn't actually give me any fear.
I think God set the limits to be 120 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't remember what book it
so
was.
that's why people don't live 500, 900 years, because God already said 120.
Right. It's either in
And
Genesis
there
or
are people who are like living today who 105, 110. So
my ex's grandfather lived to be 112.
Yeah.
So God is lengthening the days of, and these people aren't necessarily saying, "Yes, God, I want to live that long." They just are.
They just do, right? Yeah.
Now I've definitely said I want to live to 120, and I don't want to look old and decrepit somewhere.
Okay.
What does that mean, old and decrepit?
Where, you look old and you look your age, where it's like your skin.
Well, what difference does that make if you're living?
Huh?
What difference does that make if you're living?
What do you mean? It makes a heck of a lot of difference.
Good Lord.
Why would I want to live?
I can see you saying
where I can barely move. And
well, that's so you didn't say that.
But my mother-in-law is I won't say what age, she's in her 90s. I'm not allowed to say her age. But she's in her 90s, and she plays table tennis. And she's been told that she's been banned from doing smashes.
Because what now?
Where you smash, where you the table tennis ball.
Like
because
it's called the slam.
Oh, yeah. Slam. Yeah, we call it slam.
She's playing against 80-year-olds, and they can't get to it because she but she wins every time.
Good for her.
But the thing is that and that's she's capable and perfect.
She's telling her back off from the table. They'll get to it. Don't be so close up on the table.
You still gotta move.
They gotta step back a little bit so you can slam it back.
You have a better chance if you step back.
It's the Zimmer frame that gets in the way.
But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's like you're still mobile. You're still, you're not in the whole pain, joint pain, swelling here, swelling there. Okay. That's not how I want to live out to be 120.
But what I'm saying is the Lord will take us when He's ready, and whatever that is, and then we are witness, and our witness is up until that point, and just we be joyful and have the joy of the Lord in us, and that is a witness. That's what, and if it means we can't move, then we get people to come to us, so we can share our joy with them.
Yeah. It was like the Lord has given me promises for my life. And I shared that with my sister. And I said, the Lord has said that He's going to restore the years that the locust, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, and that He's giving me long life. So her question was to me, well, what age were you when He made that promise? And I said, what does that matter? Mm-hmm. And so as much as possible, I just believe God in His word. Mm-hmm. And some of you may have received this word over your life down through the years, that your latter years will be greater than your former years. And I'm a living witness that my latter years have been and are greater than my former years. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, people have a difficult time trying to guess my age. But again, God said that He would renew my youth, long life, and He would restore the years. And so whatever that means, I'm just sticking with, I'm going to be here for a minute.
Mm-hmm. With wisdom.
My mother's in the background co-signing every word. She's like, She's listening. She's 86.
Yes. So the baby boomers are living a little bit longer than people have, thought that they would. Some of that is due to the so-called, medicines and other little witty inventions, but
wait a minute. How old are baby boomers?
Huh?
What age are you picking for baby boomers?
Baby boomers.
Yeah, what age are you picking?
About what? 1945.
Yeah.
Baby boomers.
Oh dear, it's 1955. It's 1955.
No, it's
I'm
not.
a baby boomer. I'm a baby
Baby
boomer.
boomers started in 1964 and they went to 1970. I want to say two, but I could be wrong. I mean, I'm going the wrong direction. I'm sorry.
I think.
1964.
Can I just give you?
Then we're all baby boomers right here. Then
Yeah, everybody on here is a baby boomer.
1946 to 1964. Okay.
Right.
See?
So you're close. You're a year off. 1946.
Oh, I'm one of the baby boomers then.
Y'all are telling my age.
Yeah.
I don't tell my age.
Uh,
Secrets out.
It's just a number, Jacqueline. It's just a number.
One of the
so where did millennials start then?
millennium 2000.
we're getting way off topic here.
Way off. I'm getting ready to bring us back.
I want to ask you.
Earlier, we got to have some fun. Earlier, someone mentioned that God showed mercy and with the children of Israel. So, do you think that they thought he was a just God? And how did he show mercy with them? And how has he shown mercy in your life?
Wow.
Could you elaborate a little?
Yes. With the establishing of his laws.
Israelites.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're not talking about me. Yes, with them, he established his laws and expected them to follow the laws. And when they did not, then there were consequences. Some of those consequences resulted in death, some did not, mostly in death. But do you think they picture him as a just God when he issued his punishment? And now, what do you think about people today? Do they think he's a just God?
Well, I can tell you that the children of Israel did not consider it just, because wait for it.
Yeah, he's coming next.
See Gwen's eyes go, and she go, whoa, whoa, like he's coming out with something. When Korah and his followers rose up against Aaron and Moses, the two leaders they were all their tents and they were told to move apart, and the earth opened up and took them. And all Moses said was, if you are right and you should lead, then you'll die a normal death. If you are offending God, if it's what you've done is offending God, then the earth will open up and you will be swallowed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And the earth swallowed up and took them.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the other 250 who had actually joined them,
right,
were struck down.
Right. Now, what did the Israelites do the next day?
Exactly. And that's what I mean. Come to Moses and they start moaning.
Yep.
So they didn't learn from it. They complained about the fact that how dare he do what he did. And they got and that's whenever the fiery serpent came. Yeah. Because they moaned about it. They were
I think they got the plague.
A plague or something. There was something happened.
Yeah, they got a plague.
Basically, they came the next day and they really moaned about it.
Yeah. And
they were threatening Moses and Aaron. And God just said, let me destroy them.
Yeah, 14,000.
Yeah. And that's whenever he went and he interceded for them.
Yeah.
And that's when we went back to the earlier about the pastor and about done that intercession.
We also have people today that are doing that same moaning and groaning about how can a just God give a child cancer? How can a just God let me lose my spouse, or they want to think on this level when God is not on this level, so you can't put him on this level. But they want to think it through like it should make logical sense to them, when they really don't know what the purpose of all of it was or is. And to think of that everything is a punishment is not. Everything is not a punishment. It might feel like one, but it's not. So what do we do with the people today? Because they're not going to drop in a hole. I think that was done and done nicely, because we today could say, oh, that was just a sinkhole and they fell in, and not give God the glory. But he not only let them fall in, he covered it back up like nothing ever happened.
And the whole tent, all their tent, everything. Everything. They were told to move away from them.
And I love it. I shouldn't say I love it, but I love because I didn't have that big brother do this. But if I had a big brother that said, "Here, Jack, just step aside. I'm going to take care of this for you." Oh my goodness, that feeling. But anyway, when the Lord told Aaron and Moses, could you just step aside, separate yourself?
And I will take them.
Oh my goodness.
But they did.
And just like that, gone. So
I think the problem lies, like you were explaining, ordinary human beings trying to define what's just in reference to God.
Yeah.
But when we do look at most of the stories in the Bible that deal with God, I would say that we find that he is just.
Yeah.
He told Adam and Eve from the beginning, if you do this, this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the story in Numbers, he gave them many different chances. He talked about their murmuring and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell you, don't do this because this will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you can get any more just than to tell a person, don't do this, just obey me.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't obey me, this is going to happen. He told Abram, you're going to be a blessing. And those that bless you will be blessed. Those that curse you will be cursed. And then just the idea that we live in a fallen world with sinners.
Yes. Yes.
And I think when a man has the audacity, well, one of the things was that I hear about, as you say, about people saying that the God of the Old Testament is the God of wrath, and the God of the New Testament is the God of love.
It's the same guy.
And I'm just going, have you actually read Revelation?
Right.
Okay.
Is going to be one heck of a judgment, and it ain't the God, it ain't Yahweh in the sense that a father who's doing it. It's actually the Son.
The Son this time.
If Jesus is taking the throne and he's going to mill out and he's going to deliver the actual judgment, and yet he's the one who they keep saying, oh, and they make him into this little sort of sweet little sort of person. He's a God. He's God. And I'm sorry, but you don't think on the concept of a human side, from a human point of view. We're sinners. We ain't going to go to, in the sense, I wasn't going to go to hell because I don't believe in God. I'd be going to hell because I'm a sinner.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It isn't about not believing. It's because I am originally a sinner, and it's the lifeline that if I believe, confess with my mouth, and believe in my heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, then I've accepted it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on the path and on the journey to actually be renewed completely.
We have to stay on that journey though to the end.
Yes, ma'am.
The Spirit is there, and He will. The Father said, Jesus said, the Father is. You're in the Father's hand, and in my hand, and nothing, no one can take you out. No one, and that means no one.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in the hand of the Father, and there are some people who think they are, but they're not, because they never really made the commitment in their heart. They just go Sunday morning and do a little bit of Bible study, and
Lord, didn't I?
but they don't. They're not being real with God and with themselves.
Yeah.
I remembering where Jesus said, "Not everyone who calls me Lord, Lord,
Yeah,
is going to get in heaven."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the people who came, he said, came to him, said,
Didn't I?
"We didn't we
Cast out devils.
cast out devils and do all of these things, okay,
Mhm.
in your name?"
Mhm.
So they did things that the believers are in Matthew say that we can do. So they weren't just people who were sitting in the pew and came to a message. They cast out devils.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So not necessary. And Jesus said, "I never knew you."
Right.
Never. He didn't say, "Well, I knew you for a little bit and you turned your back." He didn't say
They
that.
never
He
had
said,
a
"I
relationship.
never knew you."
Right.
They never had a relationship with him.
That's what
Right. Never had a relationship. And yet they did the things that are written in Matthew. I think it's 28 or 25. That says what the believer can do.
I've got a friend who became a Christian very shortly after me, or that's what he said, had professed, and we went through at the early stage. We went through Romans,
Mm-hmm.
our little Bible study, and we went through the book of Romans, and he went to Hong Kong and was involved in what was the it was there was, I forget now, it's going back into the 80s, where it was actually working with drug addicts, but through prayer and just sort of laying on the hands, and there was just bringing the this, and he witnessed all these miracles. Okay, and he also was involved in helping out in building buildings in India. He was doing 6 months there. He done all this traveling, and he did it all. And he got involved in a really lively church. And then I just get about 10 years after I got married, he got us. And then the next thing is, I find out that in the mid-90s, he just said, "I've given up. No, I don't think I ever won. I just wanted family." And I'm going, what? It was more than that, surely. But as far as he's concerned, he's no longer walking, and I don't think he ever did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's what I'm trying to say is, sometimes people pretend or they think they are, and it's only if you know that you're walking and you're with the Lord. I know that I'm with Him.
No, it's establishing a relationship, and you know when you're in a relationship and when you're not.
Exactly.
But exactly. You have a relationship with the Lord, or you don't.
So how is it they miss that coming to the Lord? Oh, okay. That they didn't have a relationship. They must have thought they did, speaking the way they did to Jesus, but
not necessarily
according to him.
Yeah, but it's because of the heart, isn't it? It's because if you are actually I know people who actually go to church, and they think by going to church on a Sunday and doing the going to the Bible study group one day a week, and then the rest of the time they don't talk to God.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as they're concerned, they're Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that that's what they're doing. That's what it is. But they go out with their mates on a Friday night.
But that's a lot of people that think that's what it is, and that's not happening.
What about?
I'm not even talking about the people who aren't even trying to do some good works that God has given us to do. I'm talking about the people who they're doing good works, and yet they still don't have a relationship with Jesus.
How do we know?
Which is the question that I was. In fact, I was talking to Jimmy yesterday in regards to one of the ministers that has a mega church for the most part, or had a mega church in the last week and a half or so, walked away from the ministry.
He didn't walk away from the ministry.
He
I don't
said
want to get into him. I don't. I don't. Okay.
Okay.
Years ago, there was a lady in a prayer group Bible study that I was in, and she was a minister in the Presbyterian church. And so occasionally one of the ladies would say during that time period of the Bible study, I know I'm going to heaven. But the minister, who was an ordained licensed minister in the Presbyterian church, would say, how do you know that you're going to heaven? And I would, look at her, to wonder, why is it that you don't know? And you're saying that you're a licensed ordained minister in the Presbyterian church. Then I met a lady on a train one time coming back from Chicago to Detroit, and she was a pastor. And she said that she was resigning because she said, I'm saved and I really don't know Jesus.
And at least she knew that.
Yes.
Because some don't. And some, like Jimmy say, pretend. But at least she knew.
It's confusing
Or
yourself.
they think they have one and they don't really understand
what that is.
It's about works and doing the works, and that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd have to ask,
but it's
what
the works.
We know in Matthew 7:7, those guys were saying we, did deliverances and things and stuff and whatever. But as Pastor Jimmy says, it's always a heart issue. And Jesus's response was, depart from me, ye workers of iniquity.
God will use people. I've noticed God will use people. He used Nebuchadnezzar, who wasn't a very nice man. And he also used Pharaoh in Egypt, who wasn't very nice either. And he used the Assyrian king as well. He also showed mercy to Nineveh when Jonah was sent to them. And then basically he reprieved it. But the thing is that he can use anyone for his glory. Now, if the person if they think that if they're not having a real relationship with God, but they're still able to give, and he's still able to use them to give glory to him, he'll use them. As simple as that. They might not appreciate, because there was one of the things that comes to mind is that when Jesus was talking near the end of his, but just before I think Passion Week, for the Passover, he had the crowd and he was talking to them, and he had a lot of disciples, more than 12, and there was a lot of them were actually were there, and then he started talking about, I am the bread of life. And you have to eat of me, eat my flesh, and you've got to drink my blood. When they started to talk in those and get right down, and they were getting confused, the majority just said, "This is I can't work this out," and they walked away. A lot of disciples just walked away and left. And then Jesus turned around to the 12 and said, "Are you still with me?" And they stayed with him. So it was the remnant of the larger group who then stayed. Even if they didn't fully understand, they were willing to learn and were willing to trust, even if they didn't fully understand what was going on. But they were actually willing to actually be like Peter, give the confession of faith that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said that no man has given that to you except our Heavenly Father has revealed that to you. So it can only be revealed from God in that sense. And it's about, whenever I said, I know that I have a relationship with God because you have. It's about because you're walking and you're trusting and you're praying. And I have conversations and I say, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? I'm having a conversation about just the littlest things as well as the major things. It isn't just about, oh, I've got a large bill and I need some cash, Lord, for this to cover this. Not about that. It's about the daily life of what I'm doing on a daily basis. I take everything to him and I have a conversation about it. And I pray for whenever I'm go on a journey to Liverpool to collect my wife. I pray before I go. I say, keep me safe, Lord, because there are a lot of idiots on the road. And they're sure enough, I keep
running into them.
I keep missing them. But they do. They actually, there's roundabouts and they don't know how to take a roundabout. You have to give way and everything else. And otherwise they're going to run into you.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is it's about taking everything to the Lord. And I think when we do that, then we know. And you start to know and start to read his word, and you're starting to actually understand and try to ask him to reveal what his heart is to you. And then you get to know more and more what his heart is, and he will reveal it more and more to you. I think that's the difference. And I think the problem is that some people don't do that, and they think that just going to church on a daily basis is having a relationship with God. And they're going to be a big shock. There's going to be a heck of a shock.
And even in these discussions, he reveals more and more of himself, either from the reading or through someone else. And so hopefully when people are watching at a later time, he's revealing himself to them as well. So I'm going to pull us right back because I only had a couple questions left. And we're approaching that 2-hour mark, and I am trying to stay within the 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the tabernacle. And God instructed Moses, or he gave instructions on where the tribes were to be placed and how they were to be placed. So does anyone know why he arranged it the way he arranged it?
Jimmy's got it outlined.
I'm sorry?
Jimmy's got it outlined.
He's got it. I don't doubt that.
This is what I prepared earlier. No, forgive me. It's a bit rough, okay? And hold on. Oh wait.
Can't see it.
Still can't see it.
You can't see
it. You probably just have to take a picture and send it to.
Oh, okay. Right. Can I show my picture?
Yep.
Okay, let me see if I can get it.
Where's my phone? Don't know. I'll take a picture. Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. That's not what I want. Okay. Maybe I can't because it's not showing. Why wasn't it showing?
This, I send it to you.
Mm,
What's that?
I didn't say anything. Okay. Doesn't look like I can get to it, but
Well, I can describe it. They and you have to think of it not north, south, east, west, but east, west, north, and south. So it's basically it's about the east is more important than the north. East west is more important.
That's why people do the
Tendency of going north south.
right to left and then top to bottom, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Well,
it basically
returns.
east is actually where the gate is. So the gate of the tabernacle is on the east. There you go. Have you got it? Oh,
That's good.
okay.
yeah. That
So
yeah. So,
it's only showing part of it.
yeah.
Or is it showing?
So
Okay, there it is.
to the right is Judah.
Yes. So, but he had another reason why they were lined up. I know where you're going. So let me just move to this one because and it's not. Let me see if I can get the whole thing on here. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, they were there. I think because of their families, or there was a ranking for each one, right?
Yes.
Uh, yeah. Like they were clubbed together in groups. So the like of Gad and Simeon and Reuben were clumped together, and they were called. I think that was the um, tribe of Reuben.
Right, the oldest players, so they have more people.
Got the Ephraim, which has got Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually on the west side, and then Judah had the priority because Judah would be holding the scepter.
Mm-hmm.
But they were on the east side, and that was the entry. That was the only way in.
Mm-hmm.
But what was important about this is that the tabernacle. This is they would have the Levites would be surrounding the actual tabernacle. So it's longer than it is broad. So its breadth is shorter than its length. So the east side was shorter in its width than the north and south. So they would Levites would actually be encamped in line with the poles with the tabernacle. And then they could take out and they would take that space. They wouldn't surround it. There would be this gap, this fort. They could only do the east, west, north, south. So you couldn't do north, northeast or south, southwest. That didn't happen. That was free. There was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
So what you ended up doing was then all the tribes would line themselves up with the Levites, and they could only the tribe of Judah would be east of the Levites and would be in line with them. So they had to pitch their tents in that line.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter how many it took to go that way, eastward, as long as they didn't go out of east. It didn't go east, west, or north, or whatever, east, south, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They had to actually keep within that. The same as Reuben, and Dan and Ephraim. So they all had to keep within that line. And then when you look at it, you end up getting a cross.
Yeah. When God's looking down, not when we look at it, but when God's looking down.
And look at it from Judah being the bottom end, and sort of doing it that way, and then you'll see that cross.
Yeah.
And basically, it's and that was done, planned, and who's in the middle of it? God.
Yeah.
He's on the cross.
Yeah.
I just find,
and he also, remember when he was assigning, he said that the ensign would be at the front. So I put those up there. The eagle was Dan, and the ox was Ephraim, the lion was Judah, and at the bottom Reuben is man.
Yeah.
So and in the center, as you were saying, is the tabernacle. And here is kind of a close up of what was there. Oh, it has
altars.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows you how it was built, what all was there. They've got slaughter tables and the brazen altar and court of the tabernacle. Different.
There's a teaching, I don't remember it all, but that Joseph Prince does on the tabernacle, and he explains why there's why the length and the breadth, why it was the way it was.
Yeah.
And the poles, what they were made of, and what the underneath was all silver.
Yes.
It all has meaning.
Yeah. Do you know what the silver means, Gwen?
Right.
Sin. The poles are sitting on silver is for sin. That's why Judas was paid in 30 pieces of silver. It's about blood money. It's about sin. And basically the actual poles were sitting, and the linen is the white linen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're approaching it, when they could only see the white linen. So that's all you could see. And so you could just see the righteousness of God, the white. And that was his righteousness. Mm-hmm. And there was the actual the tabernacle itself, the holy and holy holies. That was from the outside. It was deliberately made to look shabby. It had just got skins on it. There was they aren't sure, it's either badger or porpoise skins on the top layer, and it was made to actually, it wasn't very attractive until you went inside and you looked up, and it was a linen ceiling with embroidered cherubims in gold thread, and it was all embroidered. So the amount of workmanship that went into it, and again the curtain, the veil was embroidered and it was just there. It's just whenever Jesus was actually it was determined that he would blend in. He would not stand out. He would be like an ordinary person. He wouldn't have, in a sense, this enormous amount of charisma, in a sense of being spotted all the time. He would just blend in. And in the same way, the tabernacle was nondescript until you actually got inside, and then it all changed. So But
So, is there a prophetic foreshadowing in Numbers?
is there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yes. Everything's prophetic.
Yeah,
It's
no.
it's
We're talking about
it's slapped me around the face with it being so descriptive on everything. It's just sort of said, Christ is coming. Your Messiah.
Yeah.
God's here.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Trust me.
I think one note is God was frustrated with the Israelites, just like Jesus was frustrated with the disciples and them getting it. You know, do you do you hear the words that are coming out of my mouth, kind of thing? Because there were some frustrations from both regarding the people. So
I think what the problem is man is as by nature prefers darkness.
because
Our heart, at the heart of man, we prefer darkness.
oh, okay.
Actually, we have to be drawn into the light. But when the light hits you, it reveals things that we don't necessarily want to be revealed.
Right, and that's probably why the people like to walk in darkness. The people that walk in darkness have seen it great lately.
It can be painful.
Yeah,
I think coming into the light of Christ can sometimes be painful, but sometimes we don't want some of
the light shined on it.
the light to reveal our ourselves, and that's what the fight is. I think we're constantly in a fight with our sinful nature and God's nature and the Holy Spirit guiding us. Because he guides us, he doesn't tell us. This is where we actually. This is when we make a free will. This is when our free will comes into play. This is when we start to make decisions. I choose not to sin. Before I was a Christian, I didn't know that anything about that. I just did it. I just do it. It was just sort of, But now I choose whether I'm going to sin or not going to sin. I have a choice. And I think that's whenever you've got the choice is when and that's what makes the difference.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up. So are there any final comments or anything for this book of Numbers?
Yeah.
I would just say that to remember that we need to mix faith with believing in God, because without faith it's impossible to please God. And that's why God wasn't pleased with the people in Numbers.
No, he wasn't. He wanted to be. But doggone, they could not get it together.
I think God demonstrated His whole persona in these first couple of books, as to who He is, especially in Numbers, as to who He is and what He will tolerate and what He will not tolerate. And unfortunately, the Israelites just couldn't get it together, or refused to get it together. Wanted to, I don't know for sure, but bottom line is they just couldn't get it together to follow God the way God wanted them to follow Him.
Either Dr. CloVice or Dr. Collins or Pastor Jimmy, you have any final comments?
Is there a verse that says, numbered among transgressors? I think there might be. If it is or if it isn't, it came to mind. And so Jesus was numbered among the transgressors. and then yet gave his life for us, that we might have life and have a relationship with him and the Father.
Interesting you say that, because what came out in one of this, and I was trying to work out how to bring it in, is their names. Whenever you go through all that list of names of all the different people, when they're going through all the names of the tribes,
Mhm.
the Hebrews had meanings for their names,
Right.
and there was one name that I got through the commentary. I can't remember exactly. I think it's Tully, and basically it actually goes, and what it means is worm. And when we then go to the Psalm, or to Isaiah, where it says about, and you'll be as crimson, your sins are as your crimson, and but you will be as white as snow or as wool. Then Jesus turns around and says that he is a worm, because he's quoting the Psalm, and one of the Psalms about being a worm. I think it's Psalm 22 actually. But this worm, there's a little tiny worm that buries itself into a tree. It sucks the sap out. It coats itself with a waxy material. Hard. The skin was very fragile, so it actually cocoons itself. It then produces its young inside this cocoon. It sacrifices itself for the purpose, and for the children, the babies actually eat it, and that's how it's sacrificed. When the babies go away, there's on the tree, there's a red spot. Okay, it leaves the wax leaves this red spot on the tree. There's nothing else, just a red spot. 3 days later, that red spot turns white.
Interesting.
And then it falls off. And Jesus is referring himself to, because there's a chemical, they use this worm, and they collect it, and they use it for the dyes, and with the Hebrews used it for the dye their cloths. But basically, this worm, he was associating himself to being the worm, and to actually, in the sense that this is sacrifice. And how many days? He was 3 days, and again turns white, and our sins are forgiven. It's through him, and it's all about the fact. It's just little snippets of it may mean nothing, but you end up putting them all together, and they create like a story,
Right.
and they all link in with each other, and they're insignificantly on their own. They're just insignificant. But when you put them in, and he called himself, I am but a worm. And he's talking about this little crimson worm that is actually going to die and then be turned in 3 days, will turn white. And we will be as white as snow in Isaiah. So it's just, I just find it's just fascinating, the whole thing about numbers. It was actually a great book to read. I've still got stuff here that I never even talked about. But that's just me, isn't it?
I did find the verse, Jacqueline. I'd like to read it. It's Isaiah 53:12. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors.
Thank you. And I think on that note, I can close. I think that kind of sums it up right there. Thank you guys so much for coming on and being a part of the discussion today. I do appreciate you. And to our viewers, please come back and join us again for our next discussion. PS Ministries, Bible reading in 1 year. P.S. God loves you, and so do we.